Now we have question 34. Let's understand what is a Benedict test. Now, as I told you earlier, that we divide carbohydrates as reducing and non-reducing sugars. Reducing sugars are those which have free functional group or free anomeric carbon. Okay, we know that what is an anomeric carbon. While studying the structure of glucose, we have two forms, two ring structures of glucose, alpha glucose and beta glucose. Okay, alpha glucose is when the first carbon have OH on the downward side, and beta form of glucose is when the first carbon is going to have OH on the upward side. That's what alpha and beta form of glucose is, and same applies on every other type of sugar like fructose or galactose. Now this carbon, the first carbon, because glucose is an aldehydic sugar, so aldehyde functional group is going to be attached on the first carbon. This first carbon is very important because it has functional group on it. So this first carbon is also called as anomeric carbon. Okay, now reducing sugars are those which has a free anomeric carbon. It has a free functional group or free hand. And non-reducing sugars are those which don't really have any sort of free anomeric carbon or any free functional group. Now in chemistry you might have heard the word reducing, which means that two reducing agents, what do they do? They basically donate electrons, they reduce other compounds or other molecules. Same applies on the sugar. So reducing sugars are those which have a free functional group and they can donate electrons and reduce other molecules or compounds. Mainly polysaccharides, because they don't have a free anomeric carbon, so they are all going to be non-reducing sugars. But mainly in exams they ask you about disaccharides, are which one is a reducing disaccharide and which one is a non-reducing disaccharide. So if we talk about maltose, it's a reducing sugar, and I just told you why. Okay, and sucrose is, in the previous question, I think it was question 32 or 31, I told you why maltose is a reducing sugar. Sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Why? Because when you form a bond between alpha glucose and beta fructose, you occupy both anomeric carbons. You make a bond between the first carbon of glucose and the second carbon of fructose. So both these carbons are occupied. The sugar overall, the structure of sucrose, don't really have any free anomeric carbon, and that is why it's going to be a non-reducing sugar. No free functional group, no free anomeric carbon. That is the reason it's a non-reducing sugar. Maltose and lactose, they both are reducing sugars. Got it? So coming back to the question, to identify which sugar is a reducing and which one is a non-reducing sugar, we do a test, Benedict test. There is one more test called as Felling's test. These both are used for detecting reducing sugar. If it's a positive test, then it means the sample contains reducing sugar. If it's a negative test, then it's a non-reducing sugar. So it says which of these gives a positive Benedict test without prior hydrolysis. Hydrolysis means breaking the bond. So for example, if you have starch, prior hydrolysis means if you break down starch, you are going to get disaccharide maltose. That's where you did hydrolysis. But it says you don't have to do hydrolysis. Tell me if a starch itself is a reducing or a non-reducing sugar. I just told you that most of the polysaccharides like starch, like cellulose, they are non-reducing. Okay, and if you talk about sucrose, I just told you sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Fine. And The option that we are left with is maltose and glycogen. Glycogen is a polysaccharide. It's a non-reducing sugar. Fine. Maltose is the correct option. It's a reducing sugar. Okay, so sucrose is non-reducing. Most of the polysaccharides, like all these starch, glycogen, cellulose, they are non-reducing. While disaccharides, most of the disaccharides, they are reducing. That means maltose, lactose, they're reducing sugars. Sucrose, generally in exams and in any competitive exams or even sent, they might ask you that, oh, sucrose is a reducing sugar or non-reducing, or they're going to give you that which one gives a positive Benedict test or positive Fellings test. So here starch and all these polysaccharides, they are non-reducing, so we are left with the option that is maltose being a reducing sugar, being a disaccharide. A solution containing an unknown carbohydrate gives a negative result with Benedict test. Benedict reagent after heating. The same solution after hydrolysis with dilute HCl gives a positive Benedict test. The unknown is most likely. So we have a solution. We don't know what type of sugar is it inside the solution, but we certainly know that it really have some carbohydrate, as they mentioned that it is an unknown carbohydrate. We don't know, let's just name it as X. So we have a solution which has like a carbohydrate inside it, and first of all it gives you a negative Benedict test. Negative Benedict test means Benedict test, as I told you in the previous question, that it is for detecting reducing sugars and non-reducing sugars. So if it's a positive test, which means that the solution or sample contains a reducing sugar, but we have a negative test, which means that the solution contains non-reducing sugar. So it means that this X is a non-reducing sugar, and I told you that you need to remember some examples, or you must have it in your head that what type of sugar is non-reducing. Sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Most of the polysaccharides like starch, glycogen, cellulose, because they don't really have any free anomeric carbon, so they are non-reducing sugars as well. Okay, let's get back to the question. So it says it gives a negative result. Okay, and negative Benedict test, we know that it's a non-reducing sugar. Okay, and the same solution after hydrolysis. After hydrolysis, what does that mean? So the same solution after hydrolysis means when you break down a bond using H2O. Okay, so if you do hydrolysis of the solution, so definitely this sugar, whatever sugar it was, you did hydrolysis with dilute H2O, and then it gave you a positive Benedict test. So tell me what type of sugar was it? So for example, if you look at glucose, so if it was glucose, right, then it's a monosaccharide. It's already a reducing sugar. Fine, so it's not going to give you a negative Benedict test at first, so it's not going to be the right option. Same goes for fructose, maltose, ribose. These all are monosaccharides, so they are reducing sugars. They cannot give you a negative test. And if you don't get it, so look at the second statement. It says after hydrolysis, so you cannot do hydrolysis of these sugars because they are already monosaccharides. How can you break down into their components? Okay, so your correct answer is sucrose. Why? Because you can do hydrolysis of this sugar. It will give you negative Benedict test because it's a non-reducing sugar, and then if you break down sucrose, if you do hydrolysis of sucrose, then you're going to get glucose plus fructose, which are reducing sugars, which means that they are going to give you positive Benedict test after hydrolysis. Okay,